These are the solutions to practice quiz 1 for quiz 6 in the third trimester of Algebra 2. So finding the amplitude and period. So the amplitude is simply the absolute value of A, which is this coefficient in front. So your amplitude is going to be 4. And that's just the distance from the midline. So if you're looking at this graph down here, you see it has an amplitude of 3. Which is the distance from the midline. The period is 2 pi over the absolute value of b, and b is the coefficient that you find inside the parentheses on x, so that's going to reduce to pi. And so period is just the length of one cycle of the wave, and so it'll start to repeat after one cycle. Max and min, so k minus absolute A, k plus absolute A. So you want to make sure that you take the absolute value of A, which is okay here because it's just 2. So if that was a negative 2, you'd have to make it 2. And k is 3. So the minimum is going to be 3 minus absolute value of 2, which is 1, and then 3 plus the absolute value of 2, which is 5. So 1 and 5 are the minimum and maximum. So again, those are y values at the minimum points and at the maximum points. Okay, matching a trig graph with its equation. A couple of things to know. So the cosine graphs are up on the y-axis, okay, and usually it's the amplitude is the distance of how far they're up because the midline is the x-axis. And the graphs of sine cut through the origin. So I know that C and D are the graphs of sine. And so how are we then going to distinguish which one's which? Well, look at the amplitude. So that's the height from the midline. And so 2 sine of 2x. So this one has an amplitude of 2. So I'm going to say that's going to be C because that's the height from the midline, which is the x-axis there. And then this one has a height of 3, okay, which is the height from the midline, which is the x-axis again. So D is going to be number 5. Now the midline on all of these is y equals 0. So it's the k value in the equation. So it's the number added on the end. So that's 0 for all of them. Okay, so y equals 0 is our midline, and you need to really know that as you're looking at trig equations, what is the midline? So that's the line that's cutting your graph in half. So the other two are cosine, and then again, just look at, so this has an amplitude of 3. Okay, so there it is, A, and then this one here has an amplitude of 2, so that has to be B here. So look at the amplitude again, which is the height from the midline in either direction. Okay, you're going to want to have your little page of identities for this. So basically, you're taking everything into sine and cosine in 7 and 8, and then on number 9, you're looking up the Pythagorean identities for that. So the cotangent is cosine over sine. And that's divided by 1 over sine, which is what cosecant is equal to. So get everything in terms of sine and cosine, and then you have to take the reciprocal of the bottom and multiply by the top. So that's the fraction rule again that we need to be aware of. Reciprocal of the bottom times the top. So these drop out and we just have cosine left. And that is B. Okay, same thing here. Get everything in terms of sine and cosine. So you need to use your page and look up these identities. So the bottom is going to get flipped and multiplied. So we have cosine over sine. And we know that to be equal to cotangent. So you have to kind of keep looking things up as you do this. Okay, Pythagorean identity portion of this. So the top is 1 and the bottom is secant squared. When you look it up, well, 1 over secant squared is cosine squared. Okay, and that is B. Okay, simple proof. So again, we're going to get everything in terms of sine or cosine, or look up the Pythagorean identity. So this is cosine over sine. And we want to know, we're trying to make both sides the same here. So those will drop, and then lo and behold, we got both sides to be the same. And once you get both sides to be the same, you just put a little check mark. I've done it. Okay, so this is 1 here. 1 plus cotangent squared is cosecant squared. So you look that up. Does that equal cosecant squared? Well, 1 times anything is a little question mark there, is the same thing. So we've got it. These seem hard, but you just got to keep looking things up until you get it. You need to, everything needs to get transferred. This is already in terms of sine and cosine. So anything that's not in terms of sine and cosine for problem 10 and 7 and 8 for that matter. And then Pythagorean identities, when you see the squares, that's the Pythagorean identity section of your notes. All right, graphing. So with this, you need to figure out what your delta table is going to be. And that's when you do the pi over 2 times b. There's absolute value 2. So pi over 4. What is this in terms of 12ths? 3 pi over 12. So it's very important that you get that. So 3 is the step. So that's 0 pi over 12. Now you can put this in to see that at 0, this is going to be 0. So this is 3 pi over 12, okay, which reduces to pi over 4. And when you put that in, you can see that that is going to be 1. Now also the midline is 0. So it's really important that you do the midline. It's y equals k. So k is the number added on the end. So again, the x-axis, and it's going to be this way throughout all your practice quizzes. The midline is 0, the x-axis. It's important because this is where your graph changes the curving. The curvature flips over. Okay, 6 pi over 12. So that reduces to pi over 2. Then we're back down to 0. 9 pi over 12. So this is going to be 3 pi over 4. And it's nice if you reduce it. This is what you really need here to do the graphing. Okay, so 0, 0, and then 3 marks up to 1. So that's the 3 pi over 12, and then 6 pi over 12. So what I'm saying is that your curvature is going to change over as we go across the midline. So here's our other 2 points. So what I mean is it's going to start curving up. So you can't draw straight lines. So you see this is kind of shaped down. And then here's the midline. And then this is shaped up. So it's quite a bit simpler than your assignment. But you do need to know the midline, and that can change based on how your problems are written. But for the sake of your practice quizzes, it's going to be y equals 0, and you need to change the curving over. Okay, and that's practice quiz 1 for quiz 6 in the 3rd trimester.